Okay, so we're going to practice adding rational expressions. So if you look up here, we have 1 over x times x minus 6 plus 3 over x minus 1, x minus 6. We need a common denominator. These two denominators are different. Our common denominator needs to include them both. So what do I do to start? Well, I start by saying, okay, whatever my common denominator is, it has to include x. It has to include x minus 6. So that's the first part. And then I come over here and say, okay, it has to include x minus 1, and it has to include x minus 6. Well, I already have the x minus 6, but I'm missing the x minus 1. So you can think of a common denominator like a word search. I need to be able to find both of these denominators in my common denominator. So here's my x times my x minus 6. Here's my x minus 1 times my x minus 6. That's my common denominator. First step. Next step, I need to figure out what is each denominator missing. So 1 over x times x minus 6, this is missing the x minus 1. So this one gets multiplied by x minus 1 over x minus 1 plus 3 over x minus 1, x minus 6. What's this one missing? Well, this one's missing the x. So it needs to get multiplied by x over x. Now, remember, I'm going to multiply across in my numerators, add them together. I'm going to leave my denominator alone. So I get 1 times x minus 1 plus 3 times x all over x times x minus 1 times x minus 6. Notice the order of my denominator doesn't matter. So x minus 6, x minus 1, x minus 1, x minus 6 doesn't matter. Now I combine like terms, and I have x minus 1 plus 3x, so that's 4x minus 1 over x times x minus 1 times x minus 6. Now I look to see, is there anything that cancels? Okay, so I'll write this as a question. Does anything cancel? Well, no. 4x minus 1 doesn't cancel with any of those. So no. So what does that mean? No holes. So wherever my denominator is equal to 0, it's not in my domain. So not in the domain is x equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0, so x equals 1, and x minus 6 equals 0, so x equals 6. These three values will be vertical asymptotes. Okay? And lastly, I'll write my domain. So starting with negative infinity, the first problem that I hit is 0. Jump over the 0. Next problem I hit is 1. Jump over the 1. Next problem I hit is 6. Jump over the 6. And go all the way to infinity.